Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Adrian and today we are doing my week in books. So we're looking at what I have been reading this week, what I've finished and what I've picked up and I'm continuing to read as this week goes on. So let's jump straight into it with books that I was carried over from last week. So the first one of these is Frenchmans Creek by Daphne du Maurier. This is a historical romance adventure. Kind of. We are following Donna, who is a lady who lives with her husband in London. She is moving out to Cornwall, to their country house, because she needs some time away from the city, and she gets caught up and embroiled with pirates on the Cornish coast. Sufficient to say, all hell breaks loose from there. It is a really enjoyable book. It's something that I have enjoyed reading a good amount. It is not necessarily a genre and a style of book that is aimed at me, but I did really enjoy it. I think it's written very well. I think it is definitely light-hearted might be the wrong word, but it's not as serious as I get the impression some of du Maurier's other works are. It was enjoyable. For me, it's probably a 3.5-star read. Not because there's anything wrong with it, it's just not quite my style as much as some other genres and some other styles of book are. However, if that does appeal to you, if a historical Regency romance adventure with a interesting, if not massively likeable main character sounds good to you, absolutely give this a go. It is really well written and I can imagine it being a good time for you. The other book that I continued on from last week and did indeed finish off was A Desolation called Peace. This is book 2 of the Takes Calenduology written by Arkady Martin, and I love the series. I absolutely love this series. So I gave A Memory Called Empire, the first book in this series, 5 stars when I read it earlier this month, and A Desolation Called Peace got a solid 5 stars for me as well. This is just a very, very interesting series. I enjoy the way our characters developed. I enjoy the way that Martin managed to expand our characters a bit, and I mean both in terms of the characters felt more real, but also in terms of the fact that the cast expanded and the point of views we got from the cast expanded. I think that's very interesting. I think that was done really well, and I think that really added to the story. And what I will say is I think the real strength for Arkady Martin in this series is her use of theming, how she discusses identity and memory and what it is to be part of a community and individuality. I think that's done incredibly well. I think that is one of the big strengths of this series. And although I am not massively well read in the sci-fi genre, this is my favourite sci-fi series I've ever read. I just absolutely adore it. I think it's done incredibly well. And if you want to know more, have a look at my Should You Read video on it. There are pros and cons there. So rather than just hearing me gush about it here, if you want a more balanced view, if you want to see some of the issues with it as well, have a look at that video and check out if this is a series you think you will like or not. Following on from Frenchman's Creek on audio, I did pick up Emperor Gods of War. This is book 4 in the Emperor series by Connor Golden. This is a Roman historical fiction. We're following Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, Pompey, Marcus Brutus, all these other guys from Roman history that we know so well in our cultural sort of heritage. I think it is a very solid series. I've said this about all the books. It is solid. It's not written in the way that it's going to be my favourite series ever. I'm not a ginormous historical fiction fan anyway. This is one of my earlier dipping of my toe in the water of historical fiction, so I don't know loads about it, but I do know that it was good fun, and it's been solid 4-star reads for me. I'm about 80% of the way through this, and we are getting towards sort of the end. You can feel the series wrapping up a little bit. I am looking forward to seeing the conclusion of it, even though in lots of ways I know what's going to happen because it's history. But how we get there, the journey, is all part of the fun. I then took a slight detour this week and picked up a couple of novellas. So these were by Niveau, So they're from the Singing Hills cycle. So book 1 of that is called The Emperor of Salt and Fortune, and book 2 is called When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. For me, these were interesting in that they are novellas, and they are very short novellas. They are like 100 pages each, but barely, and big print, small pages. You know, there's not a lot of reading here to be done. I read the 2 of them in basically a day and a half. So like one afternoon I read one, and then the next day I read the other. I will say that I think The Emperor of Salt and Fortune, book 1, for me, is a considerably better book than When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. And that's not because Nevo's done anything particularly different or like changed anything massively. I just felt the story that was being told in the first book was much more compelling for me. I think both in terms of the frame story, the frame narrative, and also what is being told within that. As you might tell from that, there is an interesting framing to the story going on here, where we have sort of the storytellers on the outside. In fact, our main character, they are a monk, or they are from a holy order where they are essentially collecting stories and recording them and maintaining these stories and this knowledge for future generations. They're a historian, if you will. Yeah, very interesting, and their frame narrative is very good and very interesting. But as well as that, I actually feel that the story being told to them, and in some cases by them, is done incredibly well. It was much more impactful for me in The Empress of Salt and Fortune, and I would absolutely recommend you taking an hour, 2 hours of your life to read that novella. It is totally worth it, and I gave it a solid 5 stars, which novellas do not get from me. I believe the only other novella I've ever given 5 stars is The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson, and this is equally as good as that, if not better. I just loved it. I thought it was absolutely incredible. So if you want something to read that's only going to take you a couple of hours, and it's going to be a lot of fun and really interesting, and actually the first one of these very impactful, I'd say absolutely give it a go. Then the next thing that I am still currently reading, this is the last thing in this wrap up, and that is going to be Guards by Terry Pratchett. This is the 3rd Discworld book I've ever got to. I have read Mort and I have read Reaper Man. So they're both from the Death subseries, whereas this is from the City Watch subseries. I enjoyed Reaper Man a lot more than I enjoyed Mort. And personally, even 35% of the way through Guards, I can tell I'm going to like this one even more. I think you can see Pratchett really finding his feet here better than he did in Mort. I do love some of the characters. I think Carrot is an absolute wonderful character. I think the naivety, the honest goodness that he is trying to bring as he moves to the city is just wonderful, and he is an incredible sort of straight man almost to Nobby and to Colin, and even to Vimes in some respects as well. I'm not very far in, but I am really enjoying it. I will say, after the first scene, all I could think of as I was reading it was the Monty Python sketch, the help, I'm being repressed.
Come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help, I'm being repressed!
It just felt like a literary version of that. It was wonderful, and I knew I was going to love this book as we moved on from there. It was just absolutely wonderful. So hopefully next week you'll see me having finished that, and you'll get to hear my full thoughts on Guards, which I know is such a well-renowned, ubiquitous book in fantasy. So I'm glad to be finally getting to it. I'm glad that I'm actually enjoying it. So that is wonderful. If you've liked this video, don't forget to click like, subscribe if you want to see more from me, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.